Hello, and welcome to this review of the Bedwyns historical romance book series by Mary Balogh. I'm Olivia, your new favorite resource for book recommendations you can easily screenshot, and this is Random Olive Reads. All right, so let's go over the overview of the series. The Bedouin series, published in the 2000s, is one of Mary Balogh's most well known series. It starts with two prequel novellas where the Bedouin family is introduced in the second book. In the main series, we see a set of six siblings, each with their own story, and the eldest brother, who is the head of the family and Duke. The Duke of Bewcastle has a notorious reputation for being stern and serious, and all of his siblings are known for being loud and boisterous and flouting social convention. From this series, including the prequels, we see the beginnings of Balogh's overarching universe. Most of the side characters in this series get their own books in future series, and the cast of characters continues to recur as time goes on. Once you get invested in the Bedouin universe, you'll start to recognize them as you keep reading Balogh's massive back catalog. So the first prequel novella is or novel is One Night for Love, and it is uh we consider this book one of the Bedouins prequel. We have Neville, who is the Earl of Kilbourne. He's waiting at the altar for his bride, and before she can even make it down the aisle, another woman named Lily shows up and says that she's his wife, and Neville totally agrees. So, years ago, while he was away in the military, Neville had married the sergeant's daughter to protect her after her father passed away. They were attacked in an ambush like the very next day, and he believed that she died. He recovers, he goes back home to his noble duties. Turns out she was taken captive the whole time, and when she was released, she came to find Neville like almost immediately. So Neville feels bad about rejecting his bride, who actually is his cousin, but wants to make it work with his wife Lily. However, Lily is all sorts of insecure because she's a commoner with no experience in how to be a lady. She didn't realize that Neville was an earl, and she's unsure of her standing with Neville. At some point, Lily leaves Neville, goes to London to acquire some etiquette lessons. There's a fun little plot twist here involving an older gentleman who's behaving strangely around Lily, which we sort of uncover towards the end of the book. This was literally the first historical romance novel that I picked up when I started reading them, and I'm happy to say that I'm still a huge fan of Mary Ballard's work. Pay close attention to Neville's relatives here because we will see them get their own stories later on. His rejected bride is in the very next book of the series. His widowed and injured sister finds her story in the first book of the Survivors Club, and his cousin Joseph features in the last book in the Simply series. So, see what I'm saying about all these characters kind of building and building onto their own stories. So, next up, we have A Summer to Remember, and this is considered book two of the Bedouins prequel. We have Lauren, who is recovering from her abandonment at the altar in the last book and is in London for the social season. Now, Kit is looking for the perfect wife so he can snub his father's chosen bride. And Kit has heard the rumors of how serious and unflappable Lauren is and wagers his friends that he can get her to marry him. While Lauren doesn't fall for his flattery, but learns that he wants to defy his father, so she proposes a deal. She'll pretend to be his fiance in exchange for a summer of adventure and possibly passion, since she has had led such a sheltered, prim, and proper life thus far and kind of got her nowhere. This is where we are introduced to the Bedouin family. Apparently, Kit's childhood home bordered the Bedouin home, and he and his brothers were friends with the Bedouin siblings growing up. One summer, he believed himself to be in love with the fiery Freya Bedouin, but was heartbroken to find that she becomes betrothed to his older brother, who is the heir to the earldom. Now, at some point in the history, his older brother had passed away, and now his father is trying to set Kit back up with Freya for an arranged marriage and kind of set these two families together. But Kit is not interested at all, especially since he was betrayed by Freya all those years ago. Now, Lauren, of course, thinks that the adventurous Freya is a better match for Kit than she is, but this is Kit and Lauren's story. In addition to all of that, Kit feels terribly guilty that his younger brother was badly injured in the war, with his face mangled and his right arm amputated. Lauren's soft spoken nature here is essential to help the brothers mend their rift and sort of bring peace back into the household. While Lauren is not exactly the type of lady that Kit's family expected him to end up with, he, of course, thinks that she's a keeper. Side note here, we get to see the scarred brother again somewhere in the Simply series, so just keep reading to find out his story. So now we have the proper book one of the Bedwyns series. This is Slightly Married. And Aidan Bedwyn is the second son, and he makes a promise to a dying soldier on the battlefield to notify the man's sister of his demise and protect her no matter what. So he goes, he finds Eve at her home and tells her the bad news. She informs Aidan that she doesn't need anything from him. He can consider his promise fulfilled. However, Aidan learns that Eve is in danger of losing her home and inheritance to another relative now that her brother is dead. And he proposes that they marry so she can keep her home and all of these misfit occupants that she's acquired and then go their separate ways. Of course, they keep getting thrown back together, especially after Aidan's older brother, the Duke of Bewcastle, learns of their marriage. We start to see the family dynamics here of all those interfering Bedwyns. They need to present Eve to society, even when she resists, due to being in mourning for her brother. And as Eve starts to integrate more with the Bedwyn family, we slowly see Aidan soften towards Eve and her adoptive children and want to make their marriage real. Slightly Wicked is book two of the series. We first meet Judith on her way to live with her aunt, and she experiences a stagecoach accident. Ranulph Bedwyn rides by and offers to go to the next town, send help, and um, to help the stranded stagecoach passengers. And he takes Judith with him. The strangers give each other fake names and identities and spend a steamy couple of days together. They each separately continue along to their intended destinations. Judith is off to her aunt's house as a poor relation to keep her grandmother company, while her cousin is being trotted out to potential suitors. Ranulph is off to his grandmother's house where she has found him a potential bride. Remember that younger cousin there. Of course, they're both headed to the same town and cross paths when Ranulph comes to call on Judith's young, eligible cousin. Cue awkward social engagements, accusations of lying to each other, one insipid, shallow cousin, another aggressive, handsy cousin, a layabout brother living beyond his means, and grandmothers who happen to be besties. So this one had a lot of chaos going on, especially since they realize they've already met each other before, and then lots of these sort of outside obligations and pressures towards both Judith and Ranulph. Slightly Scandalous is book three of the series, and we catch up with Freya Bedwyn again. So she is traveling to visit a friend in Bath. While at an inn along the journey, Joshua bursts into her room to hide. She forces him to retreat out the window and thinks she's rid of him for good. But then she sees Joshua also visiting Bath to call upon his grandmother. So both of our protagonists here are headstrong and fierce and end up stirring up drama in the sleepy town with their loud quarrels. When Joshua's aunt comes to town to set up a betrothal for her daughter, he proposes a fake betrothal to Freya. She's willing to go along with the excitement and plans to be free of the betrothal in short order. Freya wants nothing to do with any real romantic entanglements, especially since in the book A Summer to Remember, her old kind of childhood love Kit had spurned her the year before. Of course, chaos ensues when the rest of the Bedouins get involved. The eldest brother, the Duke, has come to collect Freya and Joshua back home, so they can attend the christening of Kit's newborn son. There never seems to be a good time to shake off this engagement, and Freya and Joshua just keep getting more and more entangled with each other. In this one, we learn about horrible rumors surrounding Joshua's inheritance and how he became the Marquess, the death of his cousin, why he's supporting an unmarried woman with a child, and his sweet younger cousin. And with the Balog world building, we will see his cousins again in the Simply series. Now, this one gets a lot of flack sometimes because Freya is considered to be kind of physically abusive towards Joshua. That might just be the sign of the times. This was published in 2003, and for a female to be punching and hitting and slapping a male character, it probably was seen back then as empowerment. In present day, that's seen as physical abuse, no matter which one's doing the hitting. The other criticism this book gets a lot is it's basically the same trope with a fake engagement between Freya and Joshua, and then in the previous book with Kit and Lauren. So we have two people who used to be together and are not together anymore, each having fake engagement in their own books. So that part's a little weird. Um, I like this book because I really like Joshua and how sweet he is to his cousins and why he's helping that woman with the child. And there's a lot more to his story that I appreciate more so than, like, Freya's story. Slightly Tempted is book 4 of the series. So we have Morgan Bedwyn, the youngest sister. She has just had her coming out to society. She has followed some of her friends and a potential suitor to Brussels, apparently in some anticipation of an upcoming battle against the French. Why people would travel somewhere knowing there's a potential battle, I have no idea, but I guess it was the trendy thing to do that year. Gervais, the Earl of Rossthorn, has been exiled out of England for the past 9 years, and he spots Morgan at a ball. Knowing that she's the youngest sister of the Duke of Bewcastle, he sets out to dance with her and take revenge on the Duke. He tries flattery and charm, and she isn't falling for it. Now, at some point, the battle against the French really do break out, and Morgan's brother, Aline, has gone missing. So Morgan's chaperones are like, we're out of here. We're going back to England. But they go without her because she wants to find out what happened to her brother. So in this time frame, Gervais actually becomes her friend in this time. And I don't know, in the background, as a reader, you're still feeling like he's seeking revenge. The history that Gervais has with Morgan's brother is actually really intriguing to learn about and is another step towards humanizing our favorite overbearing Duke. And of course, don't worry too much about Aline Bedwin because his book is next. And that book is Slightly Sinful and considered book 5 of the Bedouin series. Well, we find out what happens to Aline Bedouin in this one. He is thrown from his horse and believed to be dead. When a few desperate women go searching for loot from fallen soldiers, they're basically just pickpocketing fallen soldiers. He is found alive and rescued, although completely naked and unconscious. He regains consciousness in a brothel and realizes he has no idea who he is. So, one of the women, Rachel, has been tending to a Jonathan Smith, and he thinks she's some like golden angel. The women want to get back to England to catch a thief who stole their money, and Rachel feels guilty because she's the one who introduced them. Rachel's trying to get her inheritance from her uncle, so Aline slash Jonathan in the story poses as her husband, and all her friends come along. Well, all her friends are brothel workers, so we'll see what kind of trouble they get into trying to pose as um, sort of noble ladies, and then possibly try to catch that thief and figuring out at what point will Aline remember who he is. Now, the timing of this book works alongside the timing of the previous book, and it'll have the best payoff if you read them back to back. Slightly Dangerous is the last and final book of the Bedwyns series, and we have finally gotten to Wulfric Bedwyn's story. the Duke of Bewcastle, the oldest brother of all of the Bedwyns. At this point, all his younger siblings have left the nest. His longtime mistress has passed away. He has never married, doesn't have any children, and he finds himself lonely. Christine is a widow living with her mother and spinster sister. Now, both Wulfric and Christine are invited to the same house party for 2 weeks where they meet and find themselves at odds. There's this classic scene where Christine sees him from a balcony and she leans over to get a better look at him and drips like lemonade into his eye. And it's a whole thing. You just have to read it. He's haughty, aristocratic, cold, serious. She is unpolished, has no sense of decorum. She's bubbly, constantly laughing. Um, Total opposites. Now, it's a romance novel, so we assume they have to get together at some point. The question is how and if they'll overcome their differences. We see Wulfric make multiple terrible proposals, both for Christine to be his mistress and then his wife, and she soundly rejects him multiple times. However, we eventually see Christine visiting Wulfric's estate and meeting his family and learning that he's more than just the terribly grumpy man she's seen before. We also get a few scenes from the other Bedouins' point of view as well to, I don't know, see what they think of, wait, why has he invited Christine over to the estate? Plus, we get to see them all happy with their spouses and children that have collected over the course of the series. Now, I highly recommend reading the series in order to really enjoy the delicious payoff of Wulfric finding his love. We've spent so many books hearing about how stern and overbearing and serious he is. So to see him finally kind of like break down and fall in love and be emotional is really quite stunning. So this book gets top ratings for a reason. It's a lovely, emotional slow burn. This whole series is a modern classic, and I really don't think it can be missed if you're a historical romance reader. So thank you so much for watching this video. Links to all of these books are in the description box. Like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos, and you can follow me on Instagram at randomolive.